Oh my god, I love this movie so much. Thank you for the suggestion and thank you so much for voting. This movie is so ambitious with its visual style and low concept storytelling. And I love the performances. Saul is everything I need in a supporting character performance. This movie is just everything I need in a movie. It is so good. So welcome to Classic Explained episode 13, Pie. So to break it down, I'm going to use 3 themes. 1, enslavement by obsession, where we'll discuss Max's obsession, Max's childhood story, Greek figure Icarus, Max's disconnection with humanity, Max's disorders, and Saul's inner conflict. 2, imperfection versus regularity, where we'll discuss the relationship between nature and numbers, Max's hypothesis, the Hebrew alphabet, the golden spiral, the title of the film, the 216-digit number, and the Go game. And 3, divinity through knowledge, where we'll discuss Marcy and Lenny, human to God transcendence, Max's vision of white light, Max's painful episodes, the vein-looking thing on Max's head, the computer goo, AI self-awareness, Devi's sex sounds next door, Max's clone visions, the brain-poking scene, the final white light dream, the head drilling scene, and the ending, and much more. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and a comment. It helps so much. And if you want to see more of these, please make sure to subscribe as well. Let's get started. Theme number 1, enslavement by obsession. Just by hearing the premise of this movie, you know you're not in for a traditional or predictable ride in any way. The movie Pi is about a mathematician named Max who is obsessed with finding the underlying complete order to the world and universe through numbers. And this guy is really good at math. He's a genius. He can process really complex calculations in his head to the decimal before Jenna can enter them into her calculator. But of course, as we watch the film, we soon learn that this expertise and mental precision is a byproduct of something a lot more tragic. Max is essentially enslaved by his obsession with finding the mathematical equation to the pattern of the universe. It all starts with his first line in the film, a story about a moment in his childhood. When I was a little kid, my mother told me not to stare into the sun. So once, when I was 6, I did. The doctors didn't know if my eyes would ever heal. I was terrified, alone in that darkness. Slowly, daylight crept in through the bandages, and I could see. But something else had changed inside me. That day, I had my first headache. This story symbolizes the birth of Max's obsession with discovery and surpassing the boundaries of humanity. And this is why Max's mentor, Saul, compares Max to the Greek mythological figure, Icarus. I named my fish Icarus after you, my renegade pupil. You fly too high, you'll get burned. Icarus is famously known for flying too closely to the sun. Icarus was warned by his father to remain low enough to prevent his artificial wings from being scorched by the sun. However, Icarus felt more and more like a god as he flew higher and higher. And soon enough, of course, his wings were scorched by the sun and he fell to his death. Just like Icarus, Max, as a child, was warned by his parent not to try to surpass human boundaries, and by ignoring his parent, he was punished by nature. For Max, making such a mathematical discovery like the numerical pattern to the universe would transcend him from human to God, the same way Icarus would if he survived flying closely to the sun. And we'll talk more about this human versus God comparison later on in theme number 3. Max's obsession has substituted any feelings of need for love or social connection. He answers Jenna's enthusiastic math questions dismissively, and he calmly rejects any form of flirting from his beautiful and tender-hearted neighbor, Devi. And Max clearly likes Devi romantically, since we see him adjusting his hair before knocking on her door, and for other very important reasons between him and Devi in this film that we will surely discuss later. But even though he likes her, he completely resists any romantic temptation when speaking to her. And these headaches that Max has had as a child have only grown into more severe conditions as his obsession becomes more intense. He takes various drugs to maintain his sanity and combat these mental episodes he's having. But clearly some rest would have been the perfect remedy to start with. But of course, Max, with his obsession, has no time at all for rest. And Saul knows the sad, lonely, and catastrophic path Max is going down because Saul has been down that road before. Saul urges Max to take a break from his endeavors, but Max, of course, is ignorant to the suggestion. And Saul, during his phase of obsession, quit after having a stroke induced by exhaustion. Max believes Saul should have never quit and will now never be fulfilled. And the interesting thing about this whole disagreement between two incredibly similar people, just at different stages in their lives, is that Max is actually right about Saul, even though he himself should take Saul's advice and take a break. Saul just doesn't seem entirely at peace and seems like he is suppressing his genuine excitement for Max's newest discoveries. And this presumption is proven right at the end of the film when we see that Saul dies from a second stroke because he returned to his obsession, as we see on his desk the golden ratio spiral and the mysterious 216-digit number, which we will talk all about in theme number 2, imperfection versus regularity. After watching this movie, I immediately had to visit Wikipedia to review the synopsis of this film to collect my thoughts. But I also luckily read in the Wikipedia page's intro the best way to capture this theme in one sentence. The movie contrasts two seemingly irreconcilable entities: the imperfection and irrationality of humanity and the rigor and regularity of mathematics. The film, from one angle, proposes the argument that something so imperfect like humanity or nature can't be perfectly related to an algorithm composed of something as standard as numbers. But from another angle, through Max, the film proposes the counter-argument that it is possible. And this argument is best expanded upon through Max's hypothesis. 1. Mathematics is the language of nature. 2. Everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. 3. If you graph the numbers of any system, patterns emerge. Therefore, there are patterns everywhere in nature. And Max's mission is to figure out this pattern, and as a result, know the future. The stock market is a result of millions of tiny factors in life everywhere around the world. And Max believes if he can predict the stock market perfectly, he will be able to predict life perfectly. And this film, through various characters, explores math's relationship with religion, mysticism, and corporate control. When Max gets to know Lenny, we see them calculate ancient Hebrew letters with the numbers that each letter represents, and they reveal hidden patterns between the numbers and the letters when calculated together. And Max eventually compares the Hebrew letters for Tree of Knowledge to the Fibonacci sequence. Dividing the numbers representing the Hebrew letters for the Tree of Knowledge results in the golden ratio, also known as the golden spiral. And this spiral calculation reflects many of the natural spirals in the world and universe, such as in sunflowers, snail shells, and even in the Milky Way. The golden ratio spiral is one of those revolutionary mathematical equations that reveal that nature is designed by intelligence that could be numerically motivated or numerically related, or as Max believes, entirely numerical. Pi is also one of these mysterious numerical values that appears routinely in equations describing fundamental principles of the universe. And this is why the film is called Pi. Even though pi is simply a number composed of digits created by humans, it is tightly tied with so much of the natural world around us and how our universe operates. Pythagoras, a mathematician whose major contribution was the golden ratio, also believed, like Max, the universe was made of numbers. This is why this equation is so significant to the film. And we'll reference the spiral again in this video, I'm sure. But overall, if you're confused by any chance, the spiral is evidence for the possibility that the universe is composed of numbers. So eventually, during an attempt to predict the stock market numbers, Max's computer crashes, but it spits out a random 216-digit number, along with wildly low predictions of the stock market. Max figures this is just an error from his broken computer, so he throws out the printout of the 216-digit number. Soon enough, Max discovers his computer's predictions of the stock market were perfectly accurate, and the 216-digit number matches the digit length of the pattern Lenny has detected in the first 5 books in the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. And the 216-digit number is the same digit length as the number Saul found when he was obsessively searching for number nature-related answers like Max years ago when he was studying pi. So overall, this 216-digit number may be the godly, life-predicting number Max has always been searching for. Saul tells Max not to continue searching. He claims Max is putting this big coincidence together in his mind, and it's driving him insane. When your mind is obsessed with anything, you will filter everything else out and find that thing everywhere. And Saul makes a fantastic point. It proposes the question of whether we are making credible discoveries or if we're simply tying together loose coincidences to reach a conclusion that we only wish was true. And this is what the Go game represents that Saul and Max play. No two games have ever been alike, just like snowflakes. So, the Go board represents an extremely complex and chaotic universe. And that is the truth of the world, Max. It can't be easily summed up with math. But Max has never been this close to a breakthrough, so he completely ignores Saul. However, he can't recover the printout of the 216-digit number that he threw out, so he will never truly know until he finds it again and memorizes it using the highly sophisticated Ming Mecha computer chip and the words from the Torah, which were given to him by Marcy and Lenny, who we will talk about in theme number 3, Divinity Through Knowledge. During the climax of this film, we get to see 3 different characters, like Icarus, try to transcend themselves from human to God by possessing this 216-digit number. And these characters are Marcy, Lenny, and Max. Marcy intends to be godlike through control of destiny. Having control over the world economically through the stock market with a 216-digit number will remove free will from others and put the power of their fate in her hands. Lenny intends to be godlike through mystic connection. Knowing the true name of God with the 216-digit number will give him the key to the messianic age, returning peace and redemption to humanity. Max intends to be godlike through ultimate knowledge. By being the only one who knows the 216-digit number, he, like God, is all-knowing of the past, present, and future. The best example of this is when we see him perfectly predicting the stock market numbers before they appear in front of his eyes. However, we're shown in the 3rd act of this film that, like the story of Icarus, humans were never meant to possess these godly abilities beyond humanity. This type of knowledge is not meant for us. It could fully reveal to us the pointlessness of life and will most certainly remove any form of excitement or enjoyment. Such a level of knowledge given to a human could be torturous. And I think this hard truth is demonstrated more and more as this film progresses. And here's what I mean. Every time Max has a realization that gets him closer to discovering the 216-digit number, he has a dreamlike vision that indicates that he's getting closer to God in some way. These visions seem to blend with the reality around him as he is overwhelmed with this divine white light. And these visions clearly parallel this theme of crossing over from human to God, as we've seen Icarus feel more like a god as he's got closer and closer to the light of the sun. It also parallels Max's childhood story, where he was overwhelmed with the blinding light of the sun that birthed his obsession. It's almost as if every vision is a greater moment of enlightenment for Max. However, as we know, Icarus suffered as he felt himself cross over from human to God, and Max suffered as a child after he stared at the sun. Therefore, after every moment of enlightenment, Max suffers from another one of his chaotically painful episodes, and these attacks become more severe as Max has greater feelings of enlightenment. And I think this protrusive vein-looking thing in his head is almost like a part of the mind that only he in the world has developed. To me, it physically symbolizes his newfound mental connection to God. But as we've said, such a connection is not suited for humanity. This is why we see him banging and scratching only this area on the right side of his head throughout the entire film. We also see this goo that is formed out of the decay of Max's computer hardware that is melted down after computing the 216-digit number. And Max discovers in his microscope that this goo is also naturally designed in the form of the golden ratio. And when Max confronts Sol about this, Sol says, certain problems cause computers to get stuck in a particular loop. The loop leads to meltdown, but just before they crash, they become aware of their own structure. The computer has a sense of its own silicone nature, and it prints out its ingredients. And I think this entire scenario about the meltdown and the goo with the spiral and the printout of the number and the computer's awareness all adds up to this split-second moment of crossover between humanity and divinity. Almost as if Max's computer, when experiencing this number, has been touched by God. And throughout this film, I think Max is fully aware of the aspects of humanity he will lose once he learns this equation to the universe. And this is signified very clearly with his relationship with Devi. Every time he's about to press return and possibly reveal the number that will change everything, he pauses for a little while and sometimes hears Devi having sex next door. Whether this is in his head or actually happening next door, it showcases that Max does feel the slight temptation of abandoning his obsession. Deep down, he would like to enjoy aspects of humanity that he is missing out on and can never experience, like expressing passion sexually for a woman he could see himself falling in love with, like Devi. And I think this temptation to return to humanity and abandon his obsession is symbolized in a few other ways in this movie. He has these visions or hallucinations of himself at the train station, as if he has destroyed the vein on the right side of his head, like he does at the end of the film. We also see him having visions of poking this brain on the station steps that he is fascinated with. But whenever he pokes this brain, he is stricken with paranoia. And when he actually punctures the brain, he is once again overwhelmed with divine bright light. To me, this all indicates his fascination with the abilities of his own mind, resulting in divinity, but also self-destruction. And this is clearly what the film eventually leads to. In the third act of the film, as his connection with God climaxes, we see him overwhelmed with knowledge as thoughts are racing past each other through his head, and he ends up having the most chaotic episode in the entire film. And at the same time, he has his greatest moment of enlightenment. He is now completely immersed in this white light and reciting the numbers like a prayer as if he is speaking with God. However, in the next moment, he is pulled back to humanity with this hallucination of a woman's voice and this visual of him hugging a woman, which I think is Devi. And this moment showcases his final decision to put an end to his obsession and overwhelming power of knowledge. The power is too painful, and he is imprisoned by it, having never been able to appreciate others through love, such as appreciating Devi romantically. Next, he screams no and is brought back to reality, where he drills a hole into the numerically capable and divine newfound part of his brain. And in the final scene, Max is no longer able to calculate numbers as well as he used to, and it seems like he no longer has any interest in it at all. Something Sol has always wanted for Max, as well as for himself. Having physically destroyed his obsession with acquiring divinity, he is now, once again, completely in touch with humanity, fully able to appreciate the one-of-a-kind company of the beautiful people and natural world around him that until now, he never truly could see. Alright, that's my analysis. Subscribe for weekly videos, and please send me recommendations. Midsommar is next in the series, which should be really interesting. I'm super excited for it. But please, let me know your thoughts and ideas around Pi, because I know the details here are endless. I hope to see you again, and thank you so much for watching. See you later.